I couldn't make the echoes bounce around this room, chasing shadows in the gloom.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our season-ending episode of Behind Enemy Lines Hockey Podcast. We got a lot to get to today. As always, I'm joined by my friend and fellow Habs fan, Steve.
Well, Sheldon, great to be back doing another one. I know during these playoffs we've been kind of intermittent based on wanting to watch games and be part of that. And, you know, this is the episode nobody wants to make because that means our season is over. And we'll talk a little bit about that today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've had a lot going on in our personal lives too. I know you got a lot going on, and I'm, work and stuff like that. So it happens. We'll try to get and we'll try to get more frequently, even through the summer. I think there's going to be a lot to discuss and talk over the summer. I'm kind of excited for things to come, which we'll get on into later episodes. But I think you're going to lead us off with some sad news that we've had recently. Was it today or yesterday?
It was a couple of days ago. For those that are, not tuned into the real world, hockey world, unfortunately, Hab Nation lost another member of the alumni, Claude Lemieux. Unfortunately, chose to end his life. Just the day before we were eliminated from the playoffs. That was announced in the wee hours of the morning. Which is sad. He was the Game 3 torchbearer. So comes back into town, carries the torch as part of that monumental ceremony that only the Montreal Canadiens do. And, Game 4, in between Game 3 and Game 4, after in between Game 4 and Game 5, chose to end his life. Mm-hmm. And at 60 years old, dies of suicide. The ultimate infinite details I don't think are as important. They haven't been released. But we are creatures of habit. Once you're invested in something and you want to know all the details. But rest in peace, Claude. He was a true warrior. We had him for 5 years. He went on to play Jersey, Colorado, Dallas, Phoenix, San Jose. A long list of pit stops along the way, 21-year career, 4 Stanley Cups and a Conn Smythe, and really was a cutting-edge player. You love to have him on your roster, hated him if he wasn't kind of player, but yeah. At the end of the day, gone way too soon at 60 years old.
Yeah, and it's a shame, we had the discussion at home here talking about suicide and, everybody has an opinion. But I tell people, unless you've walked a mile in somebody's shoes, you just don't know, right? So you can't say, the guy had everything going, the guy had this, or the guy had, or, I'm not surprised here. I mean, you look at some of the most famous people in the world that seemed happy, like comedians and things like that, that you would never know are live through depression like nobody can imagine. And this is how they dealt with it, was their humor. And for whatever Claude's family went through and him himself, we can only speculate and hope and pray, the best for them as they carry on. But
right. Well, and I know you'll put a link up at the end of this. Mental health is the most undersought after thing that people struggle to identify. Mm-hmm. Mental health doesn't have a look, doesn't have an image. It's not gender-based. It's not religion-based, political-based, country-based. Mental health is among every single one of us. It doesn't matter if you're 20 or 60 or 80. Yeah. The demons that take over your thought process are exactly that. They're demons. And it takes a big man to step forward and say, I need help, and this is why. Not everybody realizes till they're at the brink of that final decision that they're in the place that they're in, and they think that the only way out is to end life. Mental health is it's hard, and for anybody that's got a family member dealing with this, you have to help be the voice, right? If that person isn't going to say, I need some help, if you are and recognize a friend, a family member, a loved one in some capacity of your life that doesn't seem to be themselves, doesn't appear to return phone calls, is late, doesn't show up, just appears disoriented, and behaviorally is not making the right decisions in life or whatnot. Help be the help. Be their voice for them and say it's okay. You
Mhm.
don't need to necessarily know their details, but there are places out there, whether you're in Canada, the US, or any other country. We will put a link at the end of this episode. You can put it up there. The mental health lines, we have them from Facebook posts. Please help people get the help they need.
Yeah. And again, I think communication, like you say, communication stepping up and, having a say, maybe, some people may recognize signs. Some people, most people don't, but maybe some people do. And those are the people that maybe need to speak up and say, hey, you need some help, right?
Yeah,
And
and
offer that help.
and we'll talk about Claude briefly. His wife said that he hadn't been himself. She recognized something, but did she try to get him to help? Did he say, "I'm going to Montreal. When I get back, we'll take care of it"? And then he just chose not to deal with it. It's
Mhm.
hard to say.
Yeah. There's
Nobody
only
should
there's
feel,
only one person that really knows.
yeah,
And
nobody,
unfortunately, he's not around to give the answer.
yeah, nobody should feel guilty. If you're a
Mhm.
family member or friend, you can try, but ultimately, you need the other person to be willing. So
Mhm.
nobody should feel guilty if this happens to anybody in your inner circle. We always wish that there was a better outcome to this, but um, let's just leave it as the hockey world. He was a player agent after he retired. Freddie Anderson, goalie of the Hurricanes, Mo Sider, defenseman of the Red Wings, are a couple of his prominent players. There's more going on in his brain. I know his family's agreed to donate his brain for testing. It will come back CTE signs. He played a little bit of a rugged lifestyle, wearing one of those stupid Wayne Gretzky Jofa helmets. So that there's no surprise that it's going to reveal that.
Yeah.
The sad part of that will be everything will be pinned to CTE. It'll be a contributing factor. I'm not denying that. I've seen the movie Concussion. It's a real life thing, but there has to have been something else going on, and unfortunately, we may never know.
Yeah. So on that, you had already mentioned about the different teams he played with and as you said, the four Stanley Cups. NHL totals, I'm just gonna go over this quick. He played 1,215 games, scored 379 goals, 407 assists for 786 total points. Uh, and leading to the what you had talked about with concussion syndrome and things like that, he had 1,777 penalty minutes. So he was that agitator, that guy, he got into fights, he was just that first guy in, that, you know, agitator, nobody liked to play against him, but they all loved having him on the team. So, kudos to Claude for making it known, you know, making his presence felt on the ice. And I didn't know he was an agent actually. So, he's making his presence felt off the ice, helping out the next generation of stars as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Gone way too soon.
oh, for
Regardless,
sure. Well,
he is
60,
not old.
that's not much older than what we are now, which is, it's kind of a reality kick kind of. So, um, on that note, let's go on to, less depressing things. Not quite as less depressing, but less depressing. Our Habs got trounced, I guess you would say, by Carolina 4 games straight. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty at all.
No, I mean ultimately we won game one handily. You can make the argument Carolina was too well rested, wasn't in game ready shape. We came off another game seven, exhilarating series and rode a high. And once we got a couple days sleep, that was it for us. We lost 2 games in overtime, one game where we struggled to get a whole lot of pucks on net. And theoretically, I know the skeptics and the cynics are going to say, if we won both those games, we're up 3 games to none.
Mhm.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? If we don't win those 2 games, we're down 2 games. We were down 2 games to one.
Mhm.
After that, the wheels on the bus, they didn't go round and round. They came off, and we came to a screeching halt.
Mhm.
Um, you and I talked about it before we decided to go live. Are we disappointed? I'm not. I'm disappointed in the way it ended. because nobody likes to lose 4 games straight. That hadn't been us since like October.
Mm.
But it was a good season. Overall, it was a good season.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm not, like I said, I'm not disappointed in the overall season result. I'm a little disappointed on, like I say, the last 4 games. Like you say, those 2 games that went to overtime could have went either way. You know how it is, overtime takes a lucky shot. You look at the other side of it, we got lucky on the no hit goal in overtime to win game 7. So it goes both ways. Having said that, even though those 2 games were overtime games, I think Carolina outplayed us quite significantly. And if not for Dobesh, it would have been a pretty lopsided game, and the true score would have showed.
Yeah, I will agree. The difference between the two rosters was definitely a little bit of rest.
Mhm.
And I don't want to come out as using this as an excuse. Every team has players to get hurt. Every team.
Mhm.
We had 4 or 5 guys that have pretty significant injuries that they tried to play through. And every guy in the playoffs, when you get that close, is gonna say, "Put me in, coach. Give me, a wrap. Give me a shot to numb it." They're gonna try and get through
Yeah.
because they want to be part of it. Unfortunately, it was more than that. Carolina came out and played better. They had more veterans that had been there, bought in, knew what it took to sacrifice, and just went about business a different way. They were relentless on the forecheck. They caused us to turn over pucks and take dumb penalties. Yes, the referees did call a few questionable calls that I think were a little on the soft side, more favorable to one team than the other.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, if you lose 6-2, 1 or 2 bad calls isn't the difference in that game.
Yeah.
So
Um,
hats off to the Carolina Hurricanes because they really were the better team of the series.
yeah, they earned it for sure. They deserved it. The injury front, do you want to elaborate on that a little more? Like, do you know who was hurt and had
Well,
what? Or
well, Dobson, we knew he was out, missed a large part of Series 1 against Tampa with a hand injury. Apparently, still playing, could not close his hand fully on a stick.
Mhm.
So a lot of that was not gripping the stick properly. So his passes are going to be less effective. It doesn't affect your skating, but it affects everything you do with the stick. Are
Mhm.
you guiding the puck versus turning your wrist? Are you able to do that? Well, if you can't close your hand, you got not as much control as normal. I'm sure if we went back and looked at footage of every time he got the puck, where did it go, and did it hit its targets? I'm sure he was in quite a bit of pain, and for obvious reasons. We know Hudson was playing with probably a deeply bruised shoulder. He's not a big guy. He was laid out a couple of times against Carolina.
Mhm.
Slavkovsky apparently had a banged up shoulder from when he was broadsided open ice hit. A little bit of a Charlie Horse lingering leg injury. And reports are that Mr. Suzuki has a torn muscle in his upper thigh.
Mhm.
So when you got those kind of injuries, you think, okay, yeah, my bones creak getting out of bed at night, but these guys are going out there and trying to please the millions and millions of fans that are watching the game, and trying to be the captain that he is, trying to drag the team into a fight that they were overmanned in. But, again, kudos to them. But, I'm sure the injuries will come out at the end of the year, and Carolina will have injuries by the time they're all said and done, whether they win or lose against Vegas. There's maybe a Mitch Marner Cup parade coming soon because he's there. But, at the end of the day, injuries are part of the game. You don't want to use it as an excuse. Does it hinder you? Yes, it does. But again, the better team deserved to win. Sadly, it's not what I want to admit, but it's okay. It's okay to say we were there, and we know what we have to do better next time.
Yeah. And I think um knowing that, and of course it's every year, every team, it's the same thing when they come out, when they're eliminated from the playoffs, you start to learn, the medical reports and the true things that these players go through. And it just goes to show a couple things. I tend not to judge a player on actions in playoffs. I noticed Suzuki was a little slower. I thought he handled it well. He still did, I still think he had a great playoffs. but it lets you understand more now of why, he seemed to be slower. If he has that muscle injury where he can't skate like he wants to or like he normally does, or we've seen from him all year, you get it. But it just reinforces a couple things. The passion that these guys have to win, and it's not just one or two players on one. Every player in the NHL wants to win, and they are built different than any other sport. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Basketball, those guys would be out for 4 years collecting a salary and not lose a wink of sleep over it. Soccer players, same thing. But you get a hockey player, it kills them. I mean, how many times do we tell the joke or tell the story? You know, guy takes puck to the face and loses 4 teeth. Put me in, coach. We'll worry about that after. You know what I mean? But it's
yeah,
reality. These guys are playing with some serious injuries and still want to stay in the lineup.
yeah. I mean, and I'm not going to harp on too many guys, but I had this conversation with our good friend and part-time guest appearance cameo co-host Vinny today, and we talked exactly about that. A guy gets the puck slap shot 90 miles an hour, frozen rubber disc, deflects off another guy's stick and comes up and hits him in the mouth. He grabs his mouth, picks up his chiclets, heads to the bench. He's bleeding all over the place, goes back in the dressing room. You got one guy stitching him up, trying to make sure that he's got a face for radio. The other guy's getting him a helmet with a cage. He misses 9 minutes and he's back on the ice.
Yeah.
And you watch, in a freak, bizarre accident, you're watching the Blue Jay highlights of the game yesterday, and some 12-year-old fan slings the ball out and it hits an outfielder in the wrist, and he's got to leave the game. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
How hard does a 12-year-old throw a ball? I know you're not expecting it, but a deflected puck to the face is unexpected when
Yeah.
you're
That's
not
coming
seeing
in
it
at
coming.
that's coming in at about 80, 90 miles an hour.
He goes off holding his wrist like, come on, suck it up. LaFlop James, he goes up for a layup. He goes down. He's crying, wincing around, rolling around in the game, and he's got to come out. So hockey players are built different. They will power through all this. We know wearing the red, white, and blue, and the greatest logo ever to be donned on a sports jersey. Carey Price and Shea Weber, the COVID Cup year. These guys played with massive injuries, and it cost them their careers because they were that close, that late in their career, and they risked it all. So, built differently, wired differently, and deliver differently. And, sometimes it's not the best decision, but it's not mine to make. And, as fans, you don't want to see these guys exit the game prematurely, but, you have to respect them for giving every ounce of blood, sweat, and DNA to try and find a way to hoist the cup.
Yeah. So in this episode, we're doing it a little bit different. I know we didn't have a trivia question. I want to have two final thoughts in this episode. Before we move on to our next topic, let's have a final thought on what your overall final thoughts on the season, how it went, and what do you think maybe could have been different?
Well, I mean, you look back in hindsight's always 2020, right? Let's just go with the playoff series. What do I like? What don't I like? Going from Tampa and Buffalo to Carolina, because we won 2 and we lost 1 series. Marty St. Louis is a creature of habit. He is a master motivator, and every guy that puts on that jersey when asked will probably tell you he will go down as one of the greatest coaches that they've ever played for, because he's a true player's coach. And I'm okay with that. But we got away with a big win in game 1 against Carolina. We lost an overtime game in game 2. We lose another overtime game in game 3. We lose handily in game 4. Why do you not change the lineup? Why? And I'm not picking on Jaden Struble, but we have guys taking liberties and driving at Dobish and picking on Hudson. Why, when you have one guy, not just on your team, in your roster, that is not just feared in one game, he's feared in almost every game that guy plays. Why is he not in the lineup? I look at intangibles. What does one guy bring that another guy doesn't bring? And is that guy better? I won't say that Struble brings a ton of offense. I won't say he brings a ton of defense. He doesn't bring a ton of physicality. And I don't think his hockey IQ is off the charts. Now, in saying that, he's played way more NHL games than you and I combined, even if I played them on Xbox. But he doesn't bring anything that says I need to keep him in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
You could have put Arbor Jack guy in as a sixth defenseman, and you could have said, okay, one of you mother is going to go out there and drive a guy into the end boards and make him part of the vending machine. If you're not going to do it, I'm going to put Arbor in up front to run a guy down.
Mm-hmm.
And you make it pretty clear. 72, I want you to do one thing. You see that little guy out there, Stankoven, the second he touches the puck, you put him so hard into the boards, he's going to want to go off the ice and ask for his mommy.
Mm-hmm.
You do that, you come to the bench for a line change. You don't have to go out there for a 10-minute shift to do it. Go out there, be effective in 10, 20, 40 seconds, get off. You do that again, I'll put you out for another one. You're going to pick on somebody different. Every guy on that team should have had his head on a swivel, but we didn't dress the guy. That's about the only problem I had. Would I have changed the line? Sure. Would I have maybe dropped Slav down to the second line and maybe put New Hook up on the first, try to find a balance again, like the Slav Demidov combination? I think I would have tried that in game 5, game 4, let alone game 5. I would have tried to even if it was just for a period, tried to jumpstart somewhere so that we weren't letting them be predictable. And that's the one thing that I think was a little bit frustrating for me as the fan. But I'm not certified to be an NHL coach. So, if Marty's doing it, he's probably doing it the right way for a reason. And we aren't privy to some of the behind the scenes stuff that's going on. So there's reasons that the management and coaching staff made a decision. We're not privy. We want to know, but you'll probably never know. But at the end of the day, the season was still a success.
Mm-hmm. Okay, for me, I think a couple things. One, I guess the best way to start is if you go back to episode 1 or 2, I think what it was. I think our first episode was the roster, where we made our prediction on who was going to be on the roster, who was in, who was out, all that stuff. And then it was either the second or third episode we had talked about our expectations for the year. I know we pretty much agreed, on the whole thing that Montreal was going to finish ahead of Toronto, which we did. Montreal was going to solidly get into a playoff spot. We weren't going to be squeaking around for that, 90, 95 points squeaking into the playoffs, that we were going to get the century mark in points, which we did. And we both felt that Montreal could win a round in the playoffs, which they did. So I look at it this way as a fan. We got bonus time. They won the round, great. Beating Tampa, a team technically higher in the standings, great. Then we played against Buffalo, a team that was, 4 or 5 points higher than us in the standings. And, I love to see, next to Toronto, there's probably the best team to me that you could beat is Buffalo. So, I'm more than happy with the season, the way it happened. I'm proud of the guys. I got no complaints that way. I think it boils down to those last 4 games. That first game where we won, I think my own worst enemy, I got my hopes up. I think that's what ended up happening. That first win, convincingly, I'm like, hey, we have a real shot at this, right? Then reality kicked in, and things, like you say, they just fell off. Even though those 2 games, game 2, game 3, were overtimes, I think Montreal was pretty badly outbeaten in those games, and if not for Dobesh, the score probably would have been a lot worse. I agree with you. I think, try something. What you had wasn't working. What have you got to lose, right? It's not working. You could see the pattern is going to repeat itself in game 4 and game 5. Try something a little bit different. All I know is that goal on Dobesh where Benson, I believe it was it Benson or Stank? Who was it? Ran into Stankoven, sorry, ran into Dobesh, and they counted the goal, said there was no goaltender interference. There is no scenario in the world where that is not a goaltender interference. That blows my mind. But you get favorable calls, you get calls goes against you. It all washes out in the long run. This one just hurt a little more because of the timing and the scenario. Um, but I would have liked to have seen Arbor Jacki in the lineup. Like I told a friend that the other day at hockey, if he's in the lineup and even he's just sitting on the bench, these guys are going to think twice before taking their liberties with the goalie. I mean, how many times I could probably bring up 5, 6 times in the playoffs where Dobesh got run pretty good. And there was no repercussion. That really bothers me. You have the club in your bag. You have the tool in your drawer and you don't use it. That's what bothers me. I still think St. Louis is the guy, uh, the coach for the team. I think he's a great coach. I think he does wonders with the kids and stuff like that. But it just makes me wonder why, you know, why it didn't happen. That's all. But like I said, overall, I know you are too. I'm quite happy with how the season wound up.
Yeah, I mean, we agree. It's bittersweet how it ended because in many ways, we overachieved. So if we want to dive into that, you're right. We touched base on it. We both basically said the same things, like you already pointed out. I don't need to run through it. So we were in agreement that good things were going to happen. When good things happen, we tend to get on that roller coaster where we don't want to come off because it's exciting. And you go from being on the mighty Canadian Mindbuster to the Scooby Doo ride in the child theme park at the end. You're like, well, that was kind of anticlimactic. It's over.
Yeah.
But you're right. When you look back and reflect on what went well and what didn't go well, there were a lot of positives on the season, right? Because we had personal records, Suzuki's points over 100, Caulfield hitting 50 goals, Hudson not just a sophomore slump, but he improved again on his Calder Trophy numbers. And we had an emergence of Jakob Dobish in net.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's over, but I'm probably like 95% of Hab fans. I can't wait for a training camp. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's rock and roll,
Yeah.
right? Because we know good things. We had Dobish as a top 5 rookie. Kapanen was right up there, the top 3 or 4 in goals by a rookie. Demidov was number 2 in rookie of the year voting. Lots of positives. I don't know for the life of me how after a 15% improvement on points that Marty St. Louis doesn't even get considered for coach of the year. You've got, Caulfield nominated for a Lady Bing. You've got Suzuki nominated for the Selkie. I mean, and we're really on the verge of having Hudson nominated as the Norris
Yeah.
because that's the direction we're going.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So,
we had big things come out of the team this year.
mm-hmm.
So it can't be all tears all the time.
No, no. Well, let's look at it this way. That's a pretty good lead into the next topic I want to talk about. And it's going to sort of cross over a little bit into what is potentially a next episode as far as, off-season moves we'd like to see. But I would like to discuss now basically what's the expectations for the current roster? What like I know there's players on expiring contracts, RFAs, things like that. Certain players that, let's be honest, Gallagher had his interview today or yesterday when he talked about how he thinks he's played his last game in Montreal, which, again, bittersweet. But I think the playoffs has done one thing for us. If we can take the positive out of it, is it's shown us where we need to improve. And where do you think that might be?
Well, you're right. Now just touch base. I mean, let's remember if we want to dive into the petty side of how this all ended. 2 teams have gone to the Stanley Cup final. Carolina and Vegas will be 1-2.
Mitch
Two
Marner
teams,
for MVP. Woohoo!
2 teams were eliminated in the last round: the Colorado Avalanche and the Montreal Canadiens. The Montreal Canadiens won 1 game. Colorado Avalanche did not. So
Yeah.
does that technically make us third?
Yeah, I
If that's
suppose. Yeah.
if that's the case, and this is the Olympics, we're on the podium with a bronze medal, right?
Yeah.
Like, we had a good year. But as people will say, you have to get close to realize how close you are
Or how far away you are.
or how far away you are. And we were close.
Yeah.
Close enough, but we're still far away.
Mhm.
So what does that mean? Well, again, when you lose and you lose 4 in a row, you're exposed. Not physically, but you're exposed. Where do I see this direction? Yes, every team has expiring contracts. Brendan Gallagher, you're right. He did say that in his presser that he believes he's done in Montreal, that it's time for him to move on. Sadly, and we talked about this prior as well, he doesn't have a say. He does, but he doesn't. We could say, no, we're keeping you. It's 1 more year. And then he's resigned to press box duty. That's not good PR. It's not good for luring players in. Where does that mean he goes? I've met Brendan. He's, with another buddy. I went down to a game in Phoenix. He stood outside in the Arizona heat wearing a dress shirt for 20 minutes entertaining us. I would have thumped him had he walked away. I am taller than he is, so he would have to feel the Schwiggity wrath. But he is a consummate Montreal Canadiens player. Has been, wore his heart and soul on his sleeve for 14 years. Mm. If he says I'm willing to go and we can find a dance partner, it's time to let him dance his final dance somewhere else. Mm-hmm. I hope that once his career is over, that the Montreal Canadiens somehow, some way find a role for him in our front office, because he has been truly a consummate pro for the Montreal Canadiens. But that being said, there's also a business. The business at the end of the day, folks, is that silver trophy, the hardest trophy in sport to win. It's the most grueling 28 games that you could play to get your name on a trophy. It's the only trophy that does this, where someone can look back and say, that's my dad, uncle, brother, cousin, dog walker, whatever relationship it is, and that's the name of that guy. Look, it's right there. You can't take that away from that person. Yeah. But in order to win, you have to move on from those that unfortunately don't give you the results. Mm-hmm. Brendan Gallagher is that guy. Love him to death. And I have a Galley jersey upstairs. I think mine is actually bigger than the one he wears. But I'm gonna miss him. Yeah. But he deserves to have a place to play elsewhere. I just hope we can find the partner.
Yeah, and that's ultimately the problem, is finding a trade partner. Like, he still has a year at $6.5 million on a contract. And let's be honest, without, blowing sunshine up anybody's ass, he's not a $6.5 million player, right? So it's going to take a little bit of magic to make that move happen.
He might be one of the last loyalty contracts that we have handed out, mm-hmm. right? We, for some reason, we hung on to Thomas Plekanec for years when he was past his prime. If there was ever a guy that came in off the off wing to shoot the puck and you knew it was going to hit the logo on the front of the other team's jersey, it was that guy. But we held on to him. Yeah. Yeah. Because he was a HAB and a HAB for life. Yeah. And then when we decided to trade him, we trade him to the one team that we should never trade him to, but he was terrible, so we traded him to Toronto. Yeah. And then he came back and re-signed with us. Yeah. Jokes on them. Which it's not hard when the joke's on them. Yeah. They just have to put the shirts on. But I wish them the best. So that being said, what does that mean? If I'm the general manager, or if Kent, if you're listening and you want to give me a call, you just get in touch with the producers of the show and I'll get you my cell number. Mm-hmm. But I think we need a legit number 2 center. Yeah. As much as we tinkered through injuries, and let's be honest, Newhook was out for a period of time, and we had Doc up there, we had Anderson up there, we had guys playing with Demidov. He needs some help. Mm-hmm. He's a kid. He needs some help. Mm-hmm. I think we need a legit number 2 centerman. Is it tampering if I say I'd love it to be McTavish out of Anaheim? Is that tampering? It's a pipe dream. But a guy like that would be an asset there. Mm-hmm. I don't think we have the answer internally, or they would have shown their true colors and got us over the edge. So that's an area where I think we need something else that came out of this year. Sam Montembeault is still on a Costa Rican coffee run, and good on him. I hope he's got sunscreen on. I believe he's played his last games in Montreal. Yeah. Now we can speculate, based on some news that came out of Montreal this weekend, that some guy, I don't know, if you might be familiar with him, Connor something or other. The name it'll come to me. He wears 97 or some shit.
Mhm.
But he was in Montreal for the Grand Prix and apparently house shopping.
Mhm.
McDavid, that guy.
Yeah.
Is he coming to
McJesus.
Yeah. Is he coming to Montreal? Well, that would be one hell of a dream.
Mhm.
We can argue and debate, and that's something for another story, another day. But if he comes in, would we lose a guy like Fowler going the other way for 1 year? It's possible. They need goaltending help. It would make sense. That means we still got Montembeault under contract. Is he back next year as a backup goalie? A scenario that could happen. I believe he gets traded in the offseason. I believe at 3.2 million, he's got 1 year left. That's an attractive contract for another team
Mhm.
because it buys them 1 year. And even if he's your backup goalie for 1 year, it buys you 1 year. Um, I think we have to move on from Jaden Struble. I think that when you look at the video where Jack scored the goal and Caulfield and everybody on the bench was mic'd up and they're all Jackie, like they're just going absolutely insane for Arbor scoring a playoff goal. That's the reason that guy is not tradable.
Yeah.
He is the heart and soul and the heartbeat of that dressing room. Sadly, he's taken that over from Brendan Gallagher.
Mhm.
So if I think we need another big, strong, physical style defenseman on the back end. As much as I like Dobson and Hudson and Matheson and Carrier, they're not beating you off too many pucks. So we need a guy that can play, that is imposing on the back end. We know that if we're dealing Monty, that Fowler and Dobish are your goalies next year.
Mhm.
We have Deneau back for a full year. He was a great add-on. He's not brought in to score you 40 goals. People, we can't be attached to a stat line every time. He's great on the face-off. He's a great veteran voice behind Suzuki. He delivers a mean pepperoni and cheese
Mhm.
after the game. And he's well liked by the fans, by his teammates, and by the media. So a guy who, again, tail end, he said he missed his time away from, and he's glad to be home.
Mhm.
Those are important factors on keeping, but he's got 1 more year left on his deal, so I don't see him going anywhere. And I would think that at this point, I know this is going to bring a smile to your face, but I think we've seen the last of Kirby Doc.
Yeah. Um, well, real quickly, while we're discussing this, I got up on Puckpedia here. I brought up basically Montreal's roster contracts where we're at. Patrick Laine, UFA, no secret. He's, not coming back. Uh, Joseph Eleno is RFA, Kirby Doc RFA, Zach Bolduc as RFA. I really only see them signing Bolduc. I don't see them, you know, I really don't see a scenario where the other two come back, Veleno or Doc. If they do, it would probably be Veleno on like a minimum salary, something like that. But Liney's gone. I don't see Kirby Doc. I think he had uh, slight flashes of I don't want to say brilliance, but good play in the playoffs, but he just wasn't consistent. And there's always the injury issue. You know what I mean? Like for the
Yeah,
last 3 years, we pretty much paid him to play five
half a
games,
game.
10 games a year, right? So that's money well spent elsewhere, whether it be McJesus or wherever else. But um, Jack Eye is an RFA, but you talk about Struble. Struble's at 1.4, very movable contract. I think that's a good good contract for him and a good contract for a team to take on. Monty, like you said, 3.15. I think that's a movable contract somewhere, but I think it's going to cost us to move some of these. We may have to give up
Yeah.
some draft picks to go along with it.
Well, and again, there's teams that are going to be in that same transition period that we were in 2 years ago, and you're signing guys that are 2 and 3 year deals.
Mhm.
Struble is that guy. I mean, if you could put together a package where you say to, Edmonton, we will give you Montembeault and we'll throw in Struble, you give us this guy,
Mhm.
that could be a deal like that because both those contracts aren't going to put you over the hump. Struble at 1.4 is a depth move for somebody, even if he's their seventh D man.
Mhm.
He's got experience. He's probably got a couple hundred games under his belt, and just barely over the league minimum.
But he's got
But
some
you're
playoff games too, which is
yeah,
a big thing.
yeah. I don't see a scenario unless we don't re-sign or don't trade and get a better player. I don't see a scenario where Doc and Valeno are back. I
Mhm.
believe Valeno comes back before Doc if I'm picking
Mhm.
one, because he'll come back at the league minimum. Doc will say, I've only got so many healthy games left in my career. I won't say years left, but games left. He'll want to get his 2, 3, 4, 5 million, whoever will give it to him. And someone will bite the bullet and give it to him.
And ultimately, that's what somebody will give him the money he's looking for. And I just hope it's not Montreal. I have no scenario, and I don't think it's any secret for anybody who's ever watched 5 minutes of any of our podcasts that I'm done with Kirby Doc, and I hope he never comes back to Montreal.
Right. The only way that changes is if we make a bigger trade, if we want to revisit the thought that, at the trade deadline, we tried to acquire one or two players, and Hughes has been on the Sick podcast and said to Tony himself that, there was a trade. We won't get into specifics because we could relive it again in the off season. Maybe that's something that happens. Depending on when you might watch this, if you're sitting at home bored because Habs hockey is over, we can make trades
Mhm.
with teams that are eliminated. Trades can be made. We don't have to wait for the season to be over. We don't have to wait for the entry draft. We just can't sign free agents because they're technically still under contract. So if there was a trade to be made somewhere, maybe that trade is still being talked about. But if we don't make any trades and we don't sign any free agents, maybe we bring both guys back because it's the known commodity versus the unknown. But I just can't see it.
Well, I can't see it for a couple
Changes have
reasons.
to be made.
Yeah, I can't see it for a couple reasons. One is it would be foolish to re-sign them on a team progress perspective. You know what I mean? Where we want to look to improve the team, uh, make better options, right? And the Veleno, Doc, uh, and Patrick Laine trio really they don't do anything for us that's going to make us a better team. Um, but on the other side of it, Montreal is a destiny place now. Montreal is a place where players are going to want to come, right? Now, I'm not saying, you and I have joked about it many times, and I've said it talking about, oh, Connor McDavid's coming to Montreal, right? I don't know that it's happened. I say it because just more or less to goof on my Leafs fans, friends, that they're convinced he's coming to Toronto. He's not coming to Toronto. He's going somewhere that he wants to win. The idea that he was looking at real estate there last weekend while the F1 was in town, you know, he's thinking about it, right? If it's in his head, why would he go look at houses if it's not in his head? Does it happen? I don't know. So many tumblers got to line up to go into place to make that happen, and we would have to give up a lot. Like you, the phrase you like to use. You want to get something that good, it's going to hurt. You got to give to get, right? So you're going to have
Yeah.
to give up something significant to get them, right? It's just whether you as a fan you're willing to eat that for Connor McDavid and only 2 years of guarantee on a contract. So there's all kinds of scenarios of things that can happen. But Kent Hughes has made it known
He
that they want to improve the team. So
yeah, he that was part of their presser, was that they talked about it. They said that they weren't in a position at all to go all in at the trade deadline for a guy that was on an expiring contract that wasn't coming back.
mhm,
Yes, we have assets. Yes, we're prepared to move them, but no, we're not prepared to do it just for one guy for 1 year.
mhm,
So that tells me that the game plan is very structured, very rigid,
mhm,
with a purpose.
yeah,
It doesn't mean that if you could pull off the trade for McDavid tomorrow, you don't do it.
mhm.
A guy like him is a one and done. If
There's
he's saying
exceptions to every rule.
yeah, if he's saying I'm out of here and I want to be out, and Edmonton says we're willing to meet you and get this done. If he says I'm only willing to go to four teams have got a one-off chance to get him. It's not, let's make this isn't going to linger on. That deal is going to get done, and it'll sting. But I think if you get a guy like him, and you don't give up the farm per se, he's going to resign because the chance to win here is 6 to 8 years.
Yeah.
He's had that window in Edmonton and didn't cash in. He hung around. So how many teams? Apparently, he's linked to the Rangers. Well, when are the Rangers winning?
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know that that's as accurate as the Montreal. Montreal makes sense. And why? Because we're fans.
Mhm.
I,
Yeah. Yeah.
we can dream with the best of them. But, if you're looking at legitimate, Edmonton, could he be traded to San Jose? Sure, it makes sense. Go play with Celebrini. Could be traded to Anaheim. They're a young team. They're not as close to the cusp as we are, but it doesn't mean that they can't be in a year or with one or two more players.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that guy brings you other guys in free agency where they might not go before, but hey, maybe I can go play on that guy's team. Maybe that becomes a different attraction. And then all of a sudden we add them and then we're like, okay, well, we're really close. And then next, two or three other players say, yeah, I'll change. I'd be willing to go to Montreal.
Well, look at it this way. You people can have all kinds of ideas and opinions on where McDavid should go. I know we've talked about it offline quite extensively, and not just McDavid, other players. But you got to remember three things when trading away McDavid. Number one, he has a final say on where he goes, right? So Edmonton can work out a deal with, the Carolina River Rats for $200 million and they're their six best players. Well, he's not going to agree to that. But the team's going to have a couple things. One, McDavid's got to agree to it. They have to have the salary cap space to do it, which isn't going to be cheap. And in a trade, they have to have the prospects, draft picks, whatever, roster players to be able to trade back to Edmonton, because Edmonton's not giving them away for nothing. They're going to want a top roster player. They're going to want a top prospect, and they're probably going to want 2 or 3 first-round draft picks. That's probably your starting point. So let's use Montreal for an example. You're probably going to end up giving up. I wouldn't even begin to hazard who they would want off the Montreal roster as a top player. I mean, it could be Slavkovsky. It could be who knows, right? But more than likely, you got to look at what Edmonton needs as well. They need the two glaring things they need is goaltending and defense. Montreal has that. So, for argument's sake, you could give them Fowler. Is that going to hurt? It's going to hurt, but it's going to hurt. You got to do it. You look at defensive prospects. We got Reinbacher, Engstrom, stuff like that. Even Struble, or even Matheson, Dobson, whatever. I mean, there's Carrier. There's pieces that can be moved. And Montreal is one of only 2 or 3 teams that have all their draft picks for the next 5 years. There's probably 3 teams in the NHL right now that meet all them categories. Toronto is not one of them. Toronto has no draft picks, they have no prospects, and they have no future. The most important part of it is he's going to want to go somewhere, like you say, that's on the cusp of winning a cup or very close, that he would be the difference maker, right? So his window or his list of teams is realistically very limited.
If I'm a betting man, his list of teams will be 5 or less.
I would say 5 is generous.
Because you got to want to. He's got to want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And does he want to be? And I hate to cast this particular player in this light, but I'm just going to use it as an example. Does he want to be the modern day Ray Bourque?
Mm-hmm.
You play 18 years with one team. You get traded at the trade deadline. You go play 20 games with a team and get your name on a Stanley Cup, and then you retire.
Yeah.
Everybody wants your name on the trophy. And Ray Bourque can go to the grave saying he played 19 years in the league. He has his name on the trophy. That's it. There's no asterisk. There's nobody's going to chastise him. There's no judging him. He is a Boston Bruin through and through. He just happened to win a cup with Colorado. McDavid wants to win a Stanley Cup. That everybody knows it.
Yeah. Does
Montreal have the assets? Sure, we do. But how many do you want to give? And if you only get one option, if Edmonton is smart, they say, Montreal, McDavid has identified you as a team he'd be willing to be traded to. Do you have an offer? They could then say, oh, and by the way, we're talking to the Rangers, Carolina, and Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Now you know who you're competing with. So when you look at the sum of all the parts, do we have it to make it whole?
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. I would be skeptical to give up too much. The one that's going to sting the most is Fowler because he's young and he was supposed to be the heir apparent. The other guy has taken over. There's not one player, there's not one fan of Montreal that thinks that Fowler is uprooting Dobish anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
And every goalie at that age, and they're both like 23 and 24 years old, they want to play hockey games. I can't see Fowler wanting to be in Montreal for 4 more years, 5 more years, 6 years, if he's not playing at least half the games.
Yeah.
Can you run a tandem? Well, Boston tried eventually. One of them wanted out of town. That was a 3-year experiment for Ullmark and Swayman, right? So you're on the what if scenario. And if that's the deal to get that guy, I'm sorry, but Fowler can go. I don't want him to go, but if that's the guy that they're going to hold to, because they're going to ask for Hage, they're going to ask for Zarovsky, they're going to ask for something. It's going to cost you something. Do I want to speculate if they said, give me a player? You're not agreeing to Slavkovsky. You're not agreeing to Caulfield.
Mm-hmm.
But you could say, well, look, we'll give you Reinbacher. We'll give you Fowler. We'll meet you there. We'll give you a first-round pick. And we could even throw in Struble. But the best forward we can offer you is Newhook.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to sting.
Yeah.
But there's not one person, unless you're the player itself, that isn't going to want to leave. And I'm sorry, but if I have to deal those 4 players or those 4 pieces to get McDavid, I'm in.
Oh, I make that all day long. I do that.
Because he's that kind of a player, but it's going to cost you. This isn't send Steve Bejan over there and the rights to Markov, right? Like, we're not sending Red Light Rasico and Jason Ward, former Oshawa guy who didn't last long with Montreal. We're not sending remnants. Edmonton, you said it. They need help. Where do they need it? They need it defense and goalie. We have a goalie. They're going to say, give us Dobish. You're going to say, no, we can give you Fowler. That's how that's going to go.
Yeah.
You want to pull that trigger. If you don't, you're going to say, we're not parting with this guy or this guy or this guy. We can talk about everything else. Edmonton's going to say, okay, thanks. We'll deal with the Rangers.
Yeah. Yeah. Because somebody's going to give it to them.
Somebody is going to give them the pieces because they're going to believe that guy has only got 3 to 6 years of good hockey left in him. And then, so the window is now.
Mm-hmm.
So are we pretenders or are we players?
Yeah.
No. He might not even be the guy that gets us over. Maybe there's a cheaper version of that. Mm-hmm. Is Sidney Crosby the answer?
Mm-hmm.
But you get less time with Sid the Kid. Might not cost you as much, but you get less time.
Yeah.
So
I think what it boils down to is like overall our goaltending. I think we're set up. Our defense, we're set up defensively. Like, I'm okay with the defensemen we have. I would like to have seen them utilized a little bit differently, but we're okay defensively. I think we're at an excess of defense prospects or whatever, and that's the 2 things. And for Edmonton's sake, that they're going to need. But I think what Montreal needs is depth, whether it be a 2C. They need a better second line to support Nick and the boys up on the top line. I think our bottom 6 are okay, and if you can push, the guys that were trying to be the second line guys, if you can push them down to the 3rd and 4th line where they belong and get a true second line, we're twice as good a team as we were this year. And I think we need to size up a little bit, and not necessarily just physically in size, but get players who play a physical game, that play a grittier game. That's I think that's really the 2 areas improvement that we need over anything else.
Yeah, and like you said, we're one of the few teams that have all the assets. Now, again, we're drafting 30th. It's a deep draft. It's not that deep. It's not 30 players deep.
Mm-hmm.
But to a team that's really lacking youth in their lineup and youth in their organization, it's still a top 30 pick.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it could have inherently more value somewhere else, because maybe you make the trade at the draft and you trade, Engstrom and your 30th pick somewhere else, and you get Maybe you're trading up for the 22nd pick. Well, maybe that team is trading the 30th pick and their other pick, and they're trying to move up like we did with Dobson last year. It could be more valuable for a team that's got a bigger deal pending to give another trade.
Mhm.
Um, so it's speculatory. That's fair to say, but is McDavid the guy? Look, we can dream, and every team is going to say, yeah, what's that impact look like? Let's be honest. Fanatics will sell 1 million jerseys next year. 400,000 might be McDavid Montreal jerseys if he comes,
Mhm.
right? Like, but do I see it? No, not next year. I just don't see it next year,
Yeah.
honestly. He signed a 2-year extension. Um, I think we have to make trades. Again, we need to get a little bit grittier because our young kids paid the price in the playoffs.
Mhm.
If we learned anything, we need another Josh Anderson type player. He was an absolute monster. Kudos to Andy because he was everything that we pay him for. He was every bit of that in the playoffs when he's not getting paid. Um, but we need another guy that can be gritty, and
Yeah.
we need a legit number 2 center. However, that has to be. It's not the 30th pick. We're going to have to trade for it or sign it as a free agent.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree. Um, Final thoughts. What do you got for final thoughts on this end of it?
Final thoughts. We're in a good spot. Really, we are. Everybody likes an overachiever, and everybody likes, the Mighty Ducks version of winning, and the rah Hollywood story thing. This year wasn't the year. It goes to show how close we are with the assets we had. We were the youngest team in the playoffs, again, beating our record from last year. And every time now these guys add on 20 extra games of playoff time, it just goes to show they now know the next step and the next step. And maybe that's injury management. Maybe they learned, hey, I have to shut down the regular season for a game or two because I need to be ready for game 96.
Mhm.
Right? We played 18 games in the play, 19 games in the playoffs, 82 in the regular season. We played 100 hockey games. NFL players play like a whole whopping 19 or 20 if they make it all the way to the Super Bowl. Wow, they get $40 million, and we're complaining about somebody making 12 or 13 million, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I like the direction. I think there's some things we need to work on. I think we need to get a better execution, whether it's in preparation for the power play and the penalty kill. It was inconsistent at times for my liking. At one time we were on such a heater. We were one of the top 3 power plays in the league, and then the power play goes spotty in the playoffs. Playoff hockey is different. Um, you hear the interview, Caulfield. Yeah, I sucked. We sucked. We got to get better. We need to be better. We'll have to mentally prepare better. We have to come back better because this isn't how we want the legacy to be. They know it. The players know it. Nobody, not a podcast like ours, which is really one of the top 3 in North America that analyzes hockey. Nobody, they're not listening. They don't care what we think.
Yeah.
They know better because they live it. So I like the direction. I like the pieces we have, and I like that we got clear answers. At the end of the day, we did get clear answers. We didn't overachieve, get to the playoffs, crap out in 4 games straight, get blown out 8-0 4 times, and say, where did it go wrong? We know where it went wrong.
Mhm.
So it'll be back to the drawing board. Much after they've recovered from their hangovers at the Luke Combs concert, apparently,
Mhm.
and they'll get right back to it. And this will be a team coming into next year that'll be hungry,
Mhm.
and that's what we want.
Yeah. And I agree. I like the idea of I like the direction of the team. I like, our results this year. As a fan, I'm ecstatic. I'm more than happy with how far we got, what we, went beyond our expectations. But I also like the idea of listening to Hughes talk in the presser, talking about, things they could have done, things they're not willing to sacrifice. They have a game plan and they're sticking to it. They're not rushing it. They're not willing to, blow it up and make one stupid move to try to, impress a fan or to make a move that's not necessary. Like we've said many times, sometimes the best move you make is the one you never made, right? Um, I like the direction of the team. If I can take a positive out of the loss, it was the showing of the weaknesses that we have, and it gives, the powers that be a direction to go in. What do we need to improve on? It really showed what we needed to improve on. And like I've said before, I call him the magic man. If there's anybody that can make it happen, it's Kent Hughes. He just finds a way to make things happen. He finds a way to make a move that, nobody thought was possible, or nobody ever talked about, or a player that nobody even knew was available. Um, I'm excited for the draft because I expect big moves from him. He seems to make some kind of a splash at the draft every year, whether it be, trading up for a player, or, trading away draft picks to acquire a player for, there's a lot that can go on, a lot can happen. I'm pretty excited. And like you say, moving on to bigger and better things next year. And, you know, we've got 3 months, I think it is 4 months before we're back on her again, right? So that's going to conclude today's episode. Thanks for watching. Remember, hit the like, share, subscribe button. Let us know what you think. If you got any comments or any questions, let us know. We'd love to answer them. Again, thanks for watching. As Steve always says,
Keep your stick on the ice.